Oh, this would be. Good evening.
I don't know how it works.
Well, I hear you. Who is this?
This is Christy. I'm trying to work. This is the first time I've used Zoom.
Oh, all right. It's not too bad. Well, I got mine backwards, Madam. You should be able to see my 5 love languages. Can you see that on your screen?
I did until I hit something. Yeah,
Okay.
I got it right there.
I have two screens here at home. I got it backwards, but we'll be all right the way it is. So, Catherine, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Pastor Kurt?
I'm doing good. It's a little unusual on a Tuesday night.
Good.
Kind of threw my schedule off a little, you know. Not used to doing it tonight.
I know. I was so glad that you sent the email reminder today because I completely forgot.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm not sure how. I know a couple that said they couldn't make it because of just different schedules. So we'll see how it goes. We'll be back on in two Wednesday nights from tomorrow night. We'll be back on our Wednesday night schedule at 8. So tomorrow's just because of graduation, right? K5.
Yes, K5.
Now Everly's in K5, isn't she?
No, she is K4. She is in
K4.
Sherry's class.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's going by quickly though. She came home with a whole stack of awards and she had a little medal today too. So she was really proud.
Yeah, that's good. It was neat today. I didn't see that. I did see the K5 rehearsal. That was sweet. The kids look so nice, you know. They didn't have their gowns on, but little flat boards, you know, it was nice. Little caps. Yeah, nice little program. It'll be.
I still remember mine.
You remember K5?
Yeah, so I actually I remember not having a ceremony for kindergarten graduation, but we actually had one for the child care center that I went to. It was called Fiddlesticks. And we actually would graduate from that and had a little ceremony where we wore a cap and gown and the whole 9 yards. And then we moved on to elementary school. So
I could be wrong. I don't think they did that back when. I don't remember that at that age. The only thing I remember about K5 was the room. I remember the room and it had some neat stuff to play on. That's about all I remember. So I don't think they graduated K5 back in the day.
yeah, I don't think so. That's really the only one that I remember. And then of course, you know, final graduation from high school.
Oh,
so
yeah, I remember that one.
yeah.
When I handed out the diplomas, I got the board that the diploma comes in. And inside there was a little note that said, if you want the diploma, you have to come see me, the assistant principal of the school. So
Oh.
I had missed a lot of school my senior year to play golf. And back in the day, if your parents signed, then they would count it as an excused absence. A little bit different. I don't know how it is in Maryland, different way it was in Delaware. And
Right.
so my brother signed the parent signature form. So my parents never knew that I took off all those days to play golf because my brother signed.
Oh.
So the assistant principal called in. He said, I just want to let you know that I don't know how you did it, but I knew you did something you ought not do. And he just said, I'll let you graduate anyway. And I was like, oh, my stars. I was glad he let me graduate. But I did miss
Yeah.
golf. I don't know, maybe 10 days playing golf. So yeah, those were the days you could take off school to play golf. That was good living. We had a good
Yeah.
childhood. Very good.
Yeah, it's become a little stricter.
I know.
Not as easy to get away with that now when they send your parents text messages or emails.
Hold on here, I guess Maria can make it. Let me see if I can give her the right passcode. 893-4494-4468. That is right, isn't it?
I was having a hard time logging in. Just make sure she knows that it's all uppercase for 5 love. I was doing that wrong. It's all uppercase.
Well, that's not me bad then. Uh-oh. Yeah, I don't know where I'm at to get back to where I need to go. Figure this out.
In the meeting.
Well, so 5 love capitalized, right? See if that worked for Maria. She's saying incorrect meeting passcode. Did y'all do 893?
Yeah, that was correct. I was having a hard time. And then when I put in all uppercase for 5 love, then it worked.
All right. So you have 893-4494-4468.
Yep.
Yeah, I have that too.
Oh.
And I think when I entered the password, I tried to do the number 5 and then love, and I did the capital L, but I actually did mine all lowercase and it worked.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. 5 capital L. It may not be case sensitive then.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think it
mine
is.
did. Maybe I was doing the capital L when I did it first, and then I did it all uppercase and it worked.
Huh. Let's see if she can get in. Hey, we lost Christy. Did she leave?
Yeah, I think she started to say something and then she went off.
Okay. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Hey, doing good.
Well, that's good. We're waiting for a few more. Some people have a little trouble getting in. So we'll see if they can figure it out. It's be the other issue. I've had all kinds of computer issues here at home, so let's hope we get through that, or connection issues. All right, we still good there? Our next one will be June 9th at 8 p.m. That's on the second Wednesday in June. So just giving you a heads up on that. We'll be back on the Wednesday night routine afterwards. Trying to wait here, see if I have a couple more to say they're trying to get in. Well, we'll see. If not, we'll continue. It being on a Tuesday, I think, some probably forgot about that. Wait about a couple minutes yet, then we'll start. So Andy, you didn't have any trouble logging in, huh?
Nah, well, I realized the password was all caps, but once I got that, I was good.
Okay, well, some said they logged in with all caps, some said they didn't, so I don't know. But either way, Zoom can be finicky. I found that to be the case. Do you use Zoom much at all for other things, Andy?
Yeah, I do a lot of classes on Zoom for school, and it does. Sometimes it works great, and other times it's like a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it has its little glitches for sure. Well, I'm going to start anyway because we don't wait here all night. Glad you made it out. I know it's a Tuesday, but like I said, next will be June 9th on a Wednesday at 8. April, before we start, how was Florida?
It was good. Wish
So,
I was still there.
So how was that grandbaby?
Oh, real good. I think Russ was having withdrawals more than I am.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. That baby's got him wrapped right around the little finger there.
Good. That's always good to hear. So everybody's well and healthy.
Everybody is well and healthy, yes.
And
yes.
did you have any trouble finding gas on the way down?
No, we had no issues at all. None
Good.
whatsoever. There was no lines, no issues. Of course, the cost a little bit higher, but we had no issues with gas.
Oh, that's good news. I thought you'd be all right, but you never know. It eased up here. I've had trouble finding it the one day. And then next day I did my normal trip to Pocomoke and I didn't see any stations that were out. So I figured they had it pretty well.
They had it under control. Like I thought I'd see lines and there was no lines. We whipped right in, got gas, not an issue at all.
Oh, good. Well, listen, let's pray. We'll get started here. And hopefully it won't be too long here tonight. We'd like to be done by at least 11. So just kidding. So let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you tonight for your goodness and your grace. And thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to learn and help us to glean from this study that which will help us in the rearing of children. Lord, may we understand their need of love, their need of their emotional tank, if you will, to be full. And Lord, we just pray that this will give us insight and ways to be better in our relationship with our children, that we may show them the love that you have commanded us to do in Christ's name. Amen. We're going to talk a little bit, as this whole course is going to deal a lot with the emotional tank of a child, trying to keep that full. Full emotional tank helps the child to grow up with a very healthy outlook on life. And this study deals with the 5 love languages, which are physical touch. I won't have these in order, but physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and I'm drawing a blank on the 5th one. That's terrible. But anyway, there is a 5th one: quality time, gifts, acts of service. So we're going to look at these different love languages. Each child responds to some more than others. And you can communicate your love for your child by using the right love language. Tonight's the first one is physical touch. We're going to look a little bit about that. And I think the question has to be asked, and I want to get your input on this. Were your parents affectionate? When you grew up, how affectionate would you say your parents are or were?
Mine were very affectionate. I mean, even with my dad, he, with having two young daughters, I mean, he was very loving and, would give us hugs and kisses and things like that. So my family is very affectionate. We still hug each other all the time. It was very hard during COVID to not do that.
Well, that's anyone else? Anyone had different experience? Your parents were not quite so, were not always affectionate. Not that they didn't love you. We're not talking about that, but I mean, didn't share that, with hugs and kisses and different touches and so forth. We'll talk about.
I would say my family could have been a little bit opposite. Grew up in a household. There was 6 kids, 6 of us, and my father was a gambler. He liked to go to the racetrack and blow all of his paycheck on a Friday night. So there was issues within the household. So I can remember my dad being there up until probably the 1st grade, and then my parents divorced. By that time, my siblings were older. My brother went into the military, so I can remember him a little bit. And my older sisters, I was like the next to the youngest. And when all my older sisters left the house, my mother married my stepfather, 20 years younger than she was. So that was kind of ironic, very ironic, because he was like the same age as my older sisters.
Oh, wow.
So when she married him, she kind of got like this, like she was younger again. Like she would go out and cruise the plaza. That was the thing back in the day, years ago. So it was kind of an ironic household. She, not that she didn't love us, she loved us a lot, and she was affectionate in her own way. Not a lot of hugging, not a lot of stuff like that. We were raised to go to church. We went to church every Sunday. So we were raised in that direction, but as soon as she married my stepfather, that all stopped. So it's just one of those things. And I think that's why I'm different. And I always promised myself I would be different in that aspect with my own kids, because some people, they either go the opposite or they take on what they were raised in. I kind of went the opposite because I didn't want it that way for my own children.
Well, April, that's a blessing because statistically, it's more they take on the pattern of their parents.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's really a blessing. I'm glad to hear that. And I grew up, I mean, my dad's generation, that World War II generation, wonderful people, just absolutely tremendous people of character. But when it came to affection, my dad wouldn't say, I love you. My mom was affectionate, but, dad was just more stoic than
Yep.
that. That's just sort of the way they were. And it took me a while to figure that out. Growing up, matter of fact, took me to an adulthood to kind of figure that out. But yeah, it's interesting. And the reason I ask that is this: do you physically touch your children more than what is necessary? And by physically touch, we're talking about affectionate touching. Whether it be a hug or a kiss, just any kind of physical contact would not be, obviously a wrong kind of contact. But do you touch them more than what is necessary? So what level would you say you're at on that?
That's an odd question.
It
Like,
is.
do you like are you asking, do I in general think I do it too much, or?
Yeah, too much, too little. enough?
Enough, probably.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
Catherine. No, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, I agree. I think enough for the most part.
Okay, it's kind of interesting. And I don't know this, not to apply it. And he didn't give any real details. I think somebody else is having trouble here. Zoom is not letting us log in. Oh no. Hang on a second. We got some Zoom problems. Hey Dawn, how are you?
I'm good.
Did you have trouble logging in?
I did.
What's going on? I'll see if they can get in too. But I think they're studying the book. It talked about. He didn't go into any detail, but he said he gave the in reference that most parents think they meet this need, but the reality is that in his study was that a lot of them that think they do not. And here again, this is all about showing the love. We talked about that last week, making sure that emotionally that the child's tank is full, that they feel loved, they feel secured, unconditionally loved, and that's what it's referencing to. So this love language is that of just what it says, physical touch, and what it defines is pretty simple, right? It's just the times we touch our children is what is physical touching. It can be a hug, it can be a kiss, it can be a gentle touch, it can be holding them, it can be, have them sitting on your lap when you're reading them a book. It can be a touch of a back or the tussling of their hair or whatever. And so that's the physical touch that he's referencing there. I just asked that. Oh, anyway, then the third one is this. They say that studies have shown that the babies who are held, caressed, hugged, and kissed developed a healthier emotional life. And I think that's obviously pretty well true. So, we're going to look at physical touch here with infants and toddlers. And I think the question has to be here, what are some examples of how we can do that with infants and toddlers? How we can have a physical touch, a gentle touch, a loving touch, one that they can, that'll help their tank emotionally be filled, for them to feel the unconditional love of their parents. So these are somewhat obvious, but we'll go ahead and share some examples of that.
That one's probably the most easiest, is when they're infants and toddlers, because that's how they get their care. I mean, you have to carry them and hold them. And
yeah, I agree. What do we want to add to that? I mean, there's so many things you can do at that age to have the physical touch and to feel, put the love language in them of love.
One of the things that I did with Lily, and of course, my connection with her wasn't immediate, at least her with me. I loved on her a lot, but one of the things that we would do is they would taught it in our classes that we took. They taught us to have her touch my face and I touch her face, make funny faces and caress, touch her forehead, touch her nose, rub her cheek, and then she would do it back to me. And that was something that, I found very helpful to connect with her.
Hey, that's interesting to bring it up, Dawn. In the book, he talks about if a parent is someone who's not much of a touchy-feely type of person, it's not letting him in. Well, I'm gonna tell him. If someone can't get in, I don't know what's going on there. But they actually said to touch yourself, to take your hand and rub your face with it, or rub your arm, and it was. And I was like, okay, but it was kind of I didn't realize that, but that makes sense too with a child to do that, and to rub their, to help them to make that touch as well, then touch you. And there's some things they brought out here that I think are good. In this day and age, a lot of parents are, both mom and dad have to work, and the child is often left with a provider of some type, whether it's a preschool or a nursery or whatever, right? And they did say if your child is cared for by a provider, check to see if they're getting any touch at all at the place they're being cared for. because they said that's, especially the younger they are, and we're talking infants and toddlers here, that can be so important. And they also talked about if, oftentimes if a mother and father have worked all day and they come home at night and had to pick the child up from the provider, the caregiver, then they get home, they're tired. They said, despite that, you have to really go overboard then to make sure you're spending a lot of time just holding them, cuddling them, hugging them, kissing them, making sure they're getting that. And so I think then the last thing I think is pretty obvious here. Physical touch should always be gentle and loving. That doesn't mean there can't be discipline, and we're not going to go into spanking tonight or anything like that. But let me just say that always should be gentle and loving. That's the type of touching we're talking about here tonight. Discipline's another subject, and we'll talk a little bit about anger here in a minute. But that's the next. Let's go on to the next one here for time's sake. What are ways we can implement physical touch into our infant and toddler's day? What are some routines we can do? And that, I'm all for those routines because the more it leaves less to chance that way. What are some routines?
When they're younger, I mean, especially in the baby stage, maybe rocking them to sleep.
Yeah, rocking them to sleep is good. Absolutely. What are some more?
Just getting your morning cuddles when they first wake up, her coming into the room, and after she gets up comes into our bedroom and she wants love then. So that's something that we've always done in the morning.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. And then you can also add, I'm a big guy on the first and last part of the day routines. So you do the same thing at night. We talked about that in the last study about having a time of prayer with them, but that's a great time when you're going to sit and read them the Bible before bed, instead of just tucking them in and reading it. Hold them, just hold them in your lap, and when they're little like that, and read it to them that way is a good way to do that. When you pray with them, is a good way to do that. I tell you another little thing that I picked up in the book I thought was good. Well, we didn't do this, and Donna and I didn't do this, but Donna's parents did. And I looked at that and I said, I wish I'd have done that. Every time they prayed for any meal or any type of prayer, they would hold hands. Does any of you do that?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Well, that's one more, you get one more way of physical touch in. And, here again, all these little things can add up. So that's one way too. When you pray with them, hold their hands, any little thing like that is good. Anyone else have any other advice there or ways in which we can implement physical touch into the infant and toddler's day? I'll give you some other ones then. How about a little like that? Remember, especially I used to do this. My dad used to do this with me. I do remember this. And I did it with my son when he was a little bit. Piggyback rides, remember those? Or just wrestling on the floor, or tickles. You tickle them and they tickle you. All that is really good stuff to do with the child. And we get to the end tonight. I'll give you a list of things that he has here in the book at the end as well. But remember that the goal is we want our children to know and be secure in our love for them and our unconditional love for them. And our goal is to keep that emotional tank full. Let's go on to the next group of children. That's school-age children. And, let me ask you a question. Is school a place where the child is totally secure emotionally?
No.
No, it's not. Why?
Because there can be outside influences with kids maybe being, mean or things like that.
Yeah, there are other children there, and some kids are, always have a tendency to get along with other children, or some children they really don't get along with, and there can be times with you hope not, but there can be times with teachers as well, where a teacher may have to, to move them in a certain direction and try to discipline them or maintain a control over them, and they may struggle with that. So school can be somewhat of a scary place for a child because there's a lot of uncertainty there. And that's why we're looking here at physical touch, keep that emotional tank full. The school is a place where the child is totally is a place where child is not normally totally secure, but the home should be the place of total security. That's the place where they should have unconditional love. And I'm just going to say this, and I hope it don't get me in trouble. But one of the things that's happened today that I've noticed in the years with children and teaching in schools is, unfortunately, well, I'm glad they have a place they can go where it's secure. But a lot of times for some of the children I've dealt with, the place of security has been the school, and the place of, if you will, of both positive and negative and difficulty has been the home. And it ought not be that way. That home should be the place where that child just feels relaxed, where that child feels loved, where that child feels secure. And if they're not getting that at home, that leads to some of the issues that schools face today. And it also leads where school then has to take the place of trying to provide for that child what they need emotionally. And that can be an extra level that's hard for them to do. So, we look here at school age children, that should absolutely be something we're very concerned about our homes. And listen, I know that husband and wives at times argue and can get into it. I will say my wife and I don't, but that's just because she's good. But the truth of the matter is, if that's the case, you got to shield the kids from it. You just do. And that's one thing I will say about my parents. I know they had their arguments, but the only one I could ever hear was the one after Christmas, when my dad would be mad at her because she spent too much money on Christmas gifts. And I remember that one. But the rest of the time, if they had an issue, they kept it from us. And, that's the way it ought to be. That home should be a place where that child comes and they just feel loved and welcomed and secure. I looked at this. I thought it was kind of interesting, actually. I watched I watched a school age child the other day go up and just smack his mother lightly. And I didn't know what to think of it. When I first saw it, I said, boy, I don't know if I like that. Part of me wants to go and just kind of, man up on him, you know what I mean? But I thought, boy, why does he do that? And so I asked the mother, and he does that quite frequently. Well, let me ask you a question. I'm not saying it could be because he's got some issues going on, rebellion and not being kind, not being respectful. But you know what else that could be? That could be his attempt to gain more of physical touch love. His love language may be where he needs to be hugged and he needs to be touched more, and he's just not getting that anymore. He's at that age where it's hard for a boy to get that. So sometimes I think this is an important thing. Boys need this too. And I know, all of us that have boys always want our boys to be masculine. We didn't want to be effeminate. And sometimes we think, boy, if we cuddle them too much or hug them too much or kiss on them too much, that's going to, make them turn out to be more effeminate. But may I just say that all the studies show that that's just absolutely the opposite of that. It does not do that. It just helps them to be loved and secured. So school age children are ways we can do that. Let me just say, boys 7 to 9 go through a stage where they resist physical touch. And if a child resisted, does that mean you don't give it to them? No, you still do. They still need it. But there are other ways you can do that. If they're resisting, getting kissed or getting hugged, you can give them bear hugs, just grab them and you just hold them. Or you wrestle with them, you give them high fives, it can be a little bit more vigorous, if you will. Well, that's what I said about the boys, we're not making them effeminate. So we look at this, and let me ask you this, what are ways we can implement physical touch into our school age children's day?
I can tell you this, in my household, when you talk about boys not being affectionate, I tell you, in my house, it's the opposite. Like Skylar, I have to beg for hugs and stuff like that. And she is affectionate, but I tell you, my boys, Gunner, you wouldn't imagine, but Gunner will hug me probably about 15, 16 times a day. He'll just come into the room and give me a hug and say, Mom, I love you, just out of the blue. And Kyle, we're getting to a point where we're playing this game in the house that we're counting how many times he'll actually come out and tell Mom, I love you, Dad, I love, and he's 18. So you wouldn't think that. And Kyle is first thing in the morning, Mom, can I have a hug? And when he goes to sleep. And Skylar is not that much. So I would say, some boys are just, they want that affection. And
Oh,
I know in my,
absolutely. That's good though. That's I would not have guessed that with Gunner. I just would not.
no, either you wouldn't see that because everybody looks at Gunner with his attitudes and stuff like, but Gunner he's 15, 20 times a day, just come and mom, give me a hug. And you wouldn't see that with him, but yeah.
And that may indicate that that is one of his, as we'll look in chapter 7, deals with that more. And there's actually, they give you a test that you can go over with your children. You ask them questions and they answer them. And it'll help you to identify what their their primary love language or love languages are. And, I would have a tendency to think if he's doing that, that one of his primary love languages is that of physical touch. So what are ways we can implement that into their day? Some of these are similar to toddlers, by the way.
I think like the bedtime routine or the early morning routine, that's something that we still do with Everly as well. And like Dawn had mentioned, she's typically very affectionate at those times.
Yeah, I think so too. And even, and I know when it gets a certain age, it's hard to do it, like when you're dropping them off at school, especially if they get like Gunner's age, he may, well, maybe not if he's a hugger, but they may get like, oh no, not in front of the other kids.
No, he's not. Yeah, he's not in public type. He won't do that, but definitely at home.
Well, yeah, and by the way, I think that's pretty well normal there. But there's still ways to get it in if you're not having that problem, obviously there. But any little way you can do to get the physical touch in is good. So before the morning things, and when they get home from school, you give them a hug, or bedtime a hug. When you go by them, you can just give them a little bump or a little tickle or whatever you do, get something that seems to work with them. And, just to keep that emotional tank full is what we're looking at. The next stage is the last stage, obviously, is the tweens and the teens. And, that's where sometimes they can get a little bit more prickly, would you use that word, where they're not really wanting it so much. But let me just say that they need it too. They need that also. Hugs can be done. Obviously they don't prefer being hugged in public in front of their friends, but hugs can be done. Kisses can be done. That stuff can be done, but there are other ways too. That's one of the good things about if you play sports with your kids, that gives them physical touch. Most sports have that. Soccer does, football does, basketball does, and that gives you a chance. It's not the lovey-dovey type of hugging, but it does give you some physical touch, and that's a good thing. And the book goes on to this, and this is just so true. And I've watched this. Girls especially need, teenage girls, tweens and teen girls, especially need love from their fathers. That is just such a vital thing. And and I've told some dads privately when I was a youth pastor and their daughters were struggling, and I'd say, if they don't feel that love from dad, unfortunately they may look for it in another man who's not your father, that's another boy that you may not want them to have that affection for. But they need to be that. Anything you can do. And I know some of this we're talking physical touch, and I know that has to be somewhat appropriate, to put it mildly. But that anything you do, go out on a date with them, let them feel special. We'll talk about that in other love languages. But girls need a great relationship with their dad during the tweens and the teens. What are ways we can practice appropriate physical touch with tweens and teens?
Well, one of the things my mom used to do is we'd have movie night and she'd sit like between us and, we'd lean up against her and stuff. Her having two girls, she would do our hair all the time. I always had long hair. And so she would brush our hair and we would do nails and she'd hold our hand and polish our nails, and you know what I mean? Just that kind of,
that's excellent. That's really good.
Yeah. And I remember her, I don't remember so much with my brother, what she would do, but my dad would dance with us. We went to father-daughter dances from the time we were probably 5 years old. And we looked forward to that, dancing with my father at any occasion, whether it was a wedding or, You know what I mean? Sometimes it was just turning on music in the living room, but he would dance with my mom and he would dance with us. So
Oh, that's neat. That's good. Excellent. Very good. Anyone else has something there they'd like to add? Well, let's go on to the last thing here we'll look at is physical touch, your child's primary love language. That's something you'll figure out as you go through this. I think when you see like what April said about Gunner, I think I'd be pretty safe to say that's probably one of his. Chapter 7 will give you an idea, will give us an idea more about that. And let me just say, if it is, that communicates your love for the child more deeply than the other love languages. So more than words, more than gifts, more than quality time or acts of service, is that physical touch can communicate the love that you want your child to know deep in their heart. Now, I also want to say this. If physical touch is used as an expression of anger, frustration, or hostility, parents should never lose their temper and strike their children. I've known parents that have, I had a boy one time, my youth group, and his dad just got angry and cold cocked him, man. He came to school with a black eye. And I won't say what I did to that dad, but I was not a happy man. But you can't do that. You just can't. And it's just you can't take out frustration or hostility or anger, or if you can't control them physically, you just can't do it. And if that child's love language is physical touch, and you hit them out of anything but love, that's going to hurt them more deeply than it will if something else was their love language. That can scar them. So you got to be real careful there. I mean, I understand, children can get you upset, but boy, you got to learn to walk away or get away, and you got to learn to get that under control. And whatever you do not, don't touch them in anything that isn't love. There should not be that slapping stuff that goes on and hitting, never, ever, ever in a million years. And I think the last question to simply ask yourself is, do you practice enough physical touch to keep the emotional tank full? And that's what we're looking at, trying to make sure that children know that they are unconditionally loved by their mom and their dad. So the book has the end of the chapter here. Maybe some of you have the book, know it, but some of you who don't have the book, I'm going to go over them just real briefly, some of the ideas that they have. It says, first of all, when you greet or say goodbye to your young child, gather them into your arms and hold them. Kneel down for small children. Another thing it says here, let your child hold or cuddle a soft item, such as a blanket, to soothe them. Then it gives the idea, hug and kiss your child every day when they leave and return from school, as well as when you tuck them in at night for younger children. Stroke your child's hair or rub their back when they tell you about a difficult day or are upset. How many of your parents do that? My mother used to do that. Any of you do that with your child? If they're upset, you rub their back.
Yes, we do that.
And that's he's saying that's an excellent thing to do. I just remember and my mother did the same thing. It's on here somewhere about being sick. I used to actually look forward to getting sick. My mother was so good to me. I just always felt so loved by mom during that time. So it talks about that. Shortly after disciplining your child, take a moment to give them a hug to show them the discipline was based on the consequences of the wrongful choices, but that you still love and cherish them as your child. Here's one, Dawn, very similar to what your mom did. Snuggle closely together on the couch when watching television together. Give each other a high five or similar congratulation whenever you catch your child doing something positive. Purchase a gift for your child that is touch-oriented, such as a soft pillow, a blanket, or a sweater. Occasionally yell out a group hug for your entire family, regardless of how small or large the family size. To add more fun, include a family pet, such as the dog or the cat. Then it goes on to say, play games or sports together that require physical touch. This will allow both shared time together and touch that is meaningful without appearing forced. Sing action songs together with your children that require touching and action, such as clapping hands, spinning, or jumping. Many of today's children DVDs make this even easier. Have tickle fights with your children, being careful not to allow it to become a stressful activity. With younger children, read stories together with your child on your lap. When your child is sick or gets hurt, spend extra time providing comfort, like wiping her face with a cool cloth. Oh, I got to tell you this because, when we were first married, Donna went into she had a lot of physical problems when we first got married, first couple of years. And she went in to have some tests done. And I was there. It was somewhat painful for her. And, I was there. That's what I'm going to say. I thought I was doing good. And we get done, and man, she was kind of cold towards me. We left. I thought, what's she cold about? I was here, saw her through all this. So we got in the car. I said, so you seem a little upset. Are you upset? She said, well, you didn't wipe my head. I said, what? She said, every time I was sick, like I was today, and I had to go through something like this, my mother would take a cold cloth and would wipe my head. So, that would caught me a little off guard. And I said, okay. But that meant a lot to her that her mother used to wipe her head. So when she gets sick, I don't do it enough now to think about it, but I should do more of wiping her head, right? But that's a good thing to do. Something you can do to show that affection while they're sick. And the last thing he talks about, hold hands during family prayer. So physical touch is one of the love languages. And of course, the assignment last week was to try to, keep that love tank full of your child and try to fill that up each day, making sure that we're showing them unconditional love, not love that's tied to performance, or love that's tied to a task, or love that's tied to a grade, or love that's tied to behavior. It's just an unconditional love. We love them because they're our children, just as God loves us. And then the first way in which we can show that and keep that emotional tank full, or the bucket full, as I like to call it, is by physical touch. Anyone have something like to share before we leave? And I'll try to figure out why we had so many couldn't sign in tonight. I don't know what that was all about. We'll try to get that fixed. Anyone else have something you'd like to add? Well, then we'll say good night. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you got something out of this. I'm enjoying reading the book. A very, very interesting book, a great way to better express the love that's in your heart for your children. And our next one will be on June 9th, and it'll be on the second love language, which is words of affirmation. So that's June 9th at 8 p.m. Thank you so much for joining, and we will see you when we see you. Good night.
Thanks so much, Pastor. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.